Hello, good day to one and all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Mancheri. Today we are going to discuss Part 2 of Module 1 from the paper Appreciating Drama. In the previous lecture, Part 1, we had already discussed a brief history of the origin of drama, along with the three terms tragedy, comedy, and tragicomedy. So here we go with Part 2, which speaks about the constituent parts of a drama. So, what are the most important elements of a drama? So, drama consists of six important elements. So, they are plot, character, thought, diction, spectacle, and melody. So, these are the six important parts of a drama, and this was suggested for the very first time by the Greek philosopher Aristotle in his Poetics. So, these are the six elements of drama. I repeat plot, character, thought, diction, spectacle, and melody. Now, there is a difference between these two terms here. Plot, character, thought, and diction, you can come across these parts when you read a drama. When you're reading a play from a book, you can come across these four elements, but you will miss spectacle and melody, which means these two are theater accessories. So, if you're going to watch a real live drama performance, a stage performance, then you would be watching these components as well. That is spectacle, and the other one is melody. So, spectacle is actually the visual display, which includes the stage settings and what happens on stage. And melody is actually the song composition. We'll get into the details later. So, spectacle and melody cannot be seen or cannot be enjoyed if you are reading a play from a book. Initially, we had gone through the difference between drama and theater. So, drama is just the script, whereas theater is the real performance, the stage performance. So, spectacle and melody can come only in a stage performance, which means they are theater accessories. Now, there is a lot of difference between the two terms story and plot. Though we use them synonymously or sometimes we interchange and use them, they are not really one and the same thing. So let's analyze the difference between plot and story. Story means it is a set of real incidents, a number of incidents in a sequence. This is what you call as a story. Whereas plot means it is the arrangement of these incidents. Or in other words, this is how you organize these incidents. So there is a lot of difference between story and plot. Now, story is in fact the raw material that the writer gets. Now, if you look at movies, story can be considered as a raw material that the director gets. But the plot is what the writer or the director makes out of the story. Now, one simple example for you to understand this would be the movie Titanic. Titanic, which was directed by James Cameron. Now, if you look at the story of Titanic, the story goes like this. A huge ship was built. A lot of people got into that ship, and it was believed that this ship is not going to sink. In between, you come across a character, Jack, Rose, they fall in love with each other. But the end of the story, you can see Jack dies and Rose survives. Now, years later, Rose is a very old woman, and then she is narrating the past story. Now, this is a story or the real incidents which happened. Now, plot means this was the arrangement of these incidents given by James Cameron, which means, is it happening in the same sequence if you watch the movie? No. In the movie, it begins like Rose as a very old woman, and then it goes like a flashback. And then the story is narrated. The ship was built, they got into the ship. So it comes in retrospect or it comes as a flashback. So this kind of an arrangement, which was actually done by the director. Same happens with a play. Maybe the story goes in one way, but the reorganization of the story is done by the playwright. Now, this is what you call as plot. So, this reorganization or this arrangement of incidents is very important, and this is what really makes the drama powerful and effective. Now, there are two terms coming along with the story and plot. Now, according to Russian formalism, and the different ways of narration and storytelling, story was known as fabula and plot was known as zyushe. So these are two Russian terms, and these terms were used for the very first time by Vladimir Prop. So story is fabula and plot is zyushe. So fabula is actually the raw material, whereas zyushe is the arrangement of this raw material. So, coming to the definition of plot. So, plot is the first and foremost element in a drama. So, let's discuss plot. Plot is the soul of tragedy. So, please remember the term. This is what Aristotle says. Plot is considered as the soul of tragedy. Now, Aristotle says that plot is the arrangement of incidents. So, that is what we already discussed. Plot is a rearrangement or the arrangement of incidents, and plot determines the structure of the play because the real effect of the play comes from this structure, which is in fact the plot. Now you can see a pyramid here. This is known as Freytag's pyramid. Now this is actually how every drama or every movie might take place. So it begins with an exposition. Now exposition is actually introducing the location, introducing the characters, everything. Then slowly it moves forward, and this is a rising action. So there is some kind of a complication, and then it goes to the level of climax. So something happens here, something that is really terrible, and then there is a falling action, and you call this falling action as denouement. And finally, there is a problem which needs to be resolved. So there is a resolution, and the story comes to an end. So this is how every story works, let it be a drama or a movie. So to make it more easier, let's take another example. Now let's take the example of the movie Drishyam. Let's take Drishyam 1. If you look at the story, you can see initially it is an introduction to the characters, a father, a mother, two daughters leading a very happy life. So now there is a slight complication coming. A guy enters the life of the eldest girl, so slight complications are coming. And it reaches the climax where the murder takes place and there is a problem now. So now then comes the falling action, the result of this problem, a lot of suffering, and finally there is a falling action which leads to the final resolution or the problem solving part. So this is actually the structure of all plays and all movies. Now this pyramid structure was created by Freytag and it is known as Freytag's pyramid. So, moving on to the characteristics of plot, there are certain characteristics that Aristotle demands. And the first one is plot must be a whole. So, please remember these technical terms. Plot must be a whole, which means it should be having a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, it should be a compact kind of thing. It shouldn't just start with the middle part and then the beginning part. No. It has to go in a sequence and there should be a logical order. And for this logical order, there should be a beginning, a middle, and an end. The second point is that plot must be complete. Now, by the term complete, Aristotle means there should be something which is known as the unity of action. Now, unity of action means only one particular incident or one particular storyline should be given concentration, which means there shouldn't be any other subplots and there should not be any kind of digressions. Now, if you look at certain drama or if you look at certain movies, again, you can see sometimes there would be a lot of digressions. Or sometimes there would be minor plots or subplots which are running along with the main plot. Now, Aristotle was totally against this. He says there should be only one single unity of action, which means there shouldn't be any subplots, because if you look at Shakespearean plays, you can see a lot of subplots. Now, if you look at King Lear, the play written by Shakespeare, the main story is related with King Lear, but there is a subplot which goes with another character, Gloucester. So, this is what you call as a different plot, a minor plot, a subplot, or a digression, maybe. Now, Aristotle was against this because he said that this will spoil the unity of action, because everything should be related with the hero or with that particular topic or theme. So, a plot must be complete. Now, the third one is the plot must be of certain magnitude, or it should be having a kind of organic unity. Of certain magnitude means he is actually talking about the size, because in Aristotle's days, a plot was meant to be done within 24 hours, which means within one single day. So, everything, all the incidents should happen within this one single day, which is actually the 24 hours, one movement of the sun in a day. This is how he describes it. And he also adds that it should be having some kind of an organic unity. By organic unity, he is in fact comparing a plot with a living organism. And he gives a very beautiful and interesting example. Now, Aristotle says, imagine an organism which is very long in size. What happens? You begin checking the organism from one point. Imagine if it is 3 or 4 kilometers in length. You start from one point looking at the organism, and by the time you reach the tail part, you would have forgotten the initial head part of the organism. So he says if it is too lengthy, it will spoil this organic unity. At the same time, imagine a living organism which is a microscopic kind of organism. You just can't see it at all. It's too tiny, it's too small. So he doesn't appreciate even that kind of an organism. So, what he tries to say here is that it should be of a compact size. It shouldn't be too long, it shouldn't be too short. So, the magnitude, the size should create an organic unity. So, he's comparing this unity within the drama with a living organism. And finally, he says plots can be either simple or complex. Now, there are two types of plots, simple plots and complex plots. Simple means which goes in a linear direction, and complex means a complex plot would be involving with three other terms: peripetia, anagnorisis, and suffering. Now, peripetia and anagnorisis, these two would be terms which are new to you. Please don't get worried about the terms. We will come into a detailed explanation of these terms later. So we'll keep these two right now here apart, simple and complex plots. We'll get into more details in the coming chapters. So in short, Aristotle says that a play should be well proportional. Now, along with unity of action, there are other two unities like unity of time and unity of place. Again, we'll come into that later. So he says the real beauty of a plot lies in its proper relation between the whole and its parts. So everything should be coordinated in such a way that it should contain a kind of unity of action and some kind of a harmony. So this is what he says about plot. So now moving on to the next part, what do you mean by character? Now, character is the second most important element of tragedy. Now, there are four points that Aristotle brings in when he talks about character. The first one, he says characters must be good. Second one, the characters should be appropriate to their status. Third one, the characters should be true to life. And fourth one, the characters should be consistent. So good, appropriate, should be true to life, and consistent. These are the four qualities that Aristotle finds in a character. So let's analyze this one by one. The very first one, the characters must be good in some way, which means the characters should be eminently good. Now, mostly the tragic heroes during the ancient period were kings and nobles. So, definitely they would be good people, and some kind of goodness should be there in their character. Otherwise, when something happens to them, we will not be really able to get the purgation of emotion. Now, when you watch a tragedy, we already discussed it in part one. When you watch a tragedy, you cry and you get some kind of satisfaction because you are identifying yourself with the hero of the story. But if the hero is not a good character, you will not be able to sympathize with him. So the characters must be good. And see, not just the main character. Aristotle is talking about all the other characters within the play. So he says even if they are villains, there should be some kind of goodness remaining in their character. The second one is the characters should be appropriate to their status. So, appropriate means they should actually relate with their status. Now, this means their conversation, their costumes, everything should be appropriate, which means a king has to walk like a king, a king has to talk like a king. So, this is what you mean by appropriateness. The next one is the characters should be true to life. Now, true to life means a character should be having all the necessary human qualities. Just because he is a king, he cannot hide his feelings. Even a king would have all kinds of feelings. And irrespective of caste, culture, creed, country, there is one thing that human beings can relate with one another, and that is always something related with emotions. Let us take the examples of some emotions like love, respect, sacrifice, sadness. All these emotions are experienced by all kinds of human beings all over the world. And that is how you can identify with another character. And that is the reason why we are able to identify with many characters in foreign movies. We are able to identify with many characters in American movies, in Korean movies. How is that possible? It is possible because we share the same kind of feelings or emotions. So characters should be true to life, only then we would be able to identify with them. And finally, the characters should be consistent. Now, consistent means whatever the characteristics be, there should be a kind of consistency in these characteristics. Imagine a character who's very impulsive, someone who's very, very impulsive and reckless. Now, this kind of a character shouldn't become totally different when the story moves half the way. If that happens, the character will lose the consistency. So, the characters should be consistent, which means if somebody is a foolish character, he has to remain as a foolish character throughout the play. Half the way you cannot make him wise. If you do that, there is no consistency for the character. So even if the character is an inconsistent character, that inconsistency should be consistently maintained by the playwright. So if inconsistent, they must be consistently inconsistent. Even inconsistency should be shown in the same way throughout the play. So consistency here should not be acting out of character. Because if you are a very, very wise person, you cannot talk about foolish things. If you are a foolish person, suddenly you cannot talk about wisdom. So, these are the four important qualities that Aristotle finds in a character. Aristotle feels that these four characteristics should be implemented in a character. And by the first point, good, there is another point which I missed to tell you. During the period of Aristotle, women and slaves were considered as inferiors. Okay, so mostly they were not given a lot of involvement in these plays. Now, even if you look at the Shakespearean drama that happened during the 16th century in Elizabethan England, even at that point of time, women were not allowed to write plays, or they were not allowed to get involved in plays. So even female characters were actually done by male characters. So you can see this is a condition of 16th century England. So you can imagine how it worked 5,000 or 6,000 years before in Greece. So women and slaves, they were considered as inferiors. But even when we portray women and slaves, we should not portray them as wicked characters. They can be inferiors, fine, but there should be some goodness portrayed within their characteristics. So this is what Aristotle says. So just to brush up your memory, a character should be good, should be appropriate, should be true to life, and finally should be consistent. Moving on to the next one, this is thought. Now, thought is the thoughts of characters which are expressed through words. So, this is what the characters would think, what is going on in their mind. So, what can be said and what should be said at each moment. So, the question here is, do the lines make sense? Because if a king is speaking, his thought should be appropriate with his position. If a slave is speaking, his thoughts should be appropriate with his class or position. So the lines should actually make sense. So thought is also an important part of a drama. Moving on to the next one, this is diction. So diction is actually words or the language used. Now, it comes from the word dictionary. Dictionary, diction. So, diction is the objectification of thought. So, sometimes when the hero or the character has a thought, an idea in his mind, this has to come out. Now, this can come out only in the form of words. So, diction is the objectification of thought. Thought determines what is said, while diction is how it is said. So, this is the difference between two. Thought means what is there in your mind, and diction means how you are trying to say it to others, how you are going to tell it to the audience. Diction is used to prove and refute the statements of characters. So, this is what happens inside the drama. Diction is also used to express the emotions of characters. Now, how would you understand the emotions of the characters? Now, in a lot of movies, we find certain dialogues as dialogues which remain in our hearts forever. Now, this comes because these dialogues are clad with emotions. So, diction is also used to express the emotions of characters. And this is again used to exaggerate or to diminish things. So here is a quotation by Shakespeare. Now look at the power of these words. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now, this is taken from Shakespeare's Macbeth. So you can see this is an oft quoted line because it touches the emotions on a universal level, because it is all about life of human beings. What is life? It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Because you do a lot of things, you hunt for power, money, and many other stuff, but ultimately it all leads to the grave. So this is a very powerful line, and thought can come or become words, and diction is used for that. So diction is also an important element in drama. So now we are moving on to melody and spectacle, which we had already discussed, because both these are theater accessories. Now, the Greeks used musical compositions within plays. So, a lot of songs were sung, a lot of lyrical composition actually came in Greek theater. So, remember, this actually comes from the history of Greek theater. But at the same time, it should blend according to the theme of the play. Imagine if it is a tragedy, you can't really bring comical music into it. So it has to blend in with the theme of the play. So, melody or song, this is really important, but you will miss this if you are reading out a play. Then comes spectacle. Now, spectacle refers to the staging of the play. It includes the stage settings, it includes the props used on stage, it includes the costumes of the characters, etc. So, the disasters, specifically if it is a tragedy, the disasters are showcased on the stage. So, what happens here is that you see a lot of killings, sometimes murders, fights, quarrelings, etc. on the stage. So, this is really giving you a visual kind of extravaganza, and that is why people loved watching plays. And this gives a full effect for the drama. Now, if you have gone for B zone, C zone, etc., you might have noticed that the drama competitions normally begins at evening time. You know the reason why? Because if it is performed in daylight, you will not get the real effect, the full effect of the stage settings. Because if it is presented or if the real performance happens in dark, the light settings, the stage settings, the costumes, everything will have a better effect. So, this gives a full effect for the drama, spectacle, and even melody. But one thing that Aristotle points out here is that if it is a real quality tragedy, a tragedy with all the qualities mentioned here, even without this melody and spectacle, even if you read out the play, you will sense all the emotions necessary for the purgation or the process called catharsis. Now, I think that is really true, right? Because you don't need to watch things to cry over it always. Sometimes you read a novel and cry. Sometimes you read a short story and cry. Sometimes even a very small story, a flash story, can make you cry. So, spectacle, the visual appealing, or melody, the song compositions, these are not always necessary for the part of purgation. Even without this, for example, if you read certain works, if you read certain novels, some novels will make you cry. So there is a catharsis which is happening, the purgation of emotions. And when you're reading a novel, there is no spectacle. The only spectacle is your own visualization. There is no melody or song coming in between. But still, even without these two accessories, you would be able to enjoy the novel or enjoy the play or whatever it is. And you might be crying at the end of it. So there is catharsis which is happening. So there is purgation of emotion which is happening. So Aristotle says the proper pleasure from a work can come even without melody and spectacle. So they are just additional sources which can create a better emphasis or a better effect on the drama. So, with this, we come to the end of this part, the constituent elements of drama. So, thank you very much for your patient listening. If you have any queries or if you need more assistance, please feel free to connect with me in my email ID. So, thank you very much. Thank you.